Nick Fosberg helped put all this together. Give him a big round of applause. Thank you, Nick.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for coming out. As you guys know why we're here. Throwing another curveball, and Pritzker's telling us we have to shut down. So our goal today was obviously to bring everybody together and educate everybody on what can happen if we do stay open, and also if we do stay closed. There's a lot of rumors of felonies that we can get, and we could be shut down in a matter of a few days. So there's a lot of lies out there. I reached out to Tom last Saturday. Gave me a lot of great information that I didn't know. I reached out to a couple other attorneys as well here in town. Got some great information. So we thought it was good to get everybody together to kind of learn the facts, right, from an attorney who's kind of gone through all this. And on top of this, you guys probably know New York, 373 bar restaurant owners last month got together, filed a lawsuit against their governor. 2 days later, what happened? They got dine-in seating. So what we're looking to do is get everybody educated, not making any final decisions tonight, but think about it all, talk to your attorneys if you need to, but our goal is to bring the numbers and try to keep everybody open and do what we need to do, because the more people that do it, the harder it's going to be for them to try to shut us down. And I'm so short, what they're doing is illegal, you know. So but Tom's going to go through all that stuff with you. Thank you guys for coming out, showing the support, and let's stay open. Let's stay open. Thank you, Tom. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. John Cabello, where you at? John just wanted to say a couple words real quick, and then Tom, you can take over. So, thank you.
Thank you. It's great to see everybody here. Unfortunately, it's for the reason why we're all here. Please know that there are several of us that are fighting for you. Please know that there's several of us that are going to stick our necks out for you. We are with you 110%, and I will do anything I possibly can. Call me anytime you need, day or night. Text me day or night. We're here for you. Stand strong, and we'll get through this.
And if you don't have his cell phone number, I'll give it to you. Hello, everybody. My name is Tom DeVore. I'm an attorney from about 4 hours south of here. I've been in the middle of the disaster, let's call it a disaster, technically. Practically, I don't think so. Since April 1st, when the governor first extended his disaster proclamation and his resulting emergency powers. I've talked about this issue, and it relates to bars and restaurants and business owners now for several months in various different capacities. I have probably since April, back when bars and restaurants couldn't even be open at all, 300 something businesses across 50 counties I've helped navigate through this and make decisions. Most of them opened. None of them, bars and restaurant owners, have ever to date had any licensure suspended or revoked, ever. Okay? We're going to get to that.
Does someone have a soap opera on their phone?
It's probably me.
Oh, that's yours?
My bad. Am I fired? Sorry about that, you guys. And that's important. And when I say that, and as we get into this, I want to make it clear that there is a virus. We all understand that. What that means and how it needs to be dealt with, that's a complicated conversation. There's a pandemic response plan that's existed in this state for a long time. It's 125 pages long that helps deal with a lot of that. I'll talk about that briefly too. But ultimately, for you guys, figuring out how do I operate my business, how do I operate responsibly, because nobody wants to do anything to cause anybody any health issues. But we still have to accept that there's a balancing act here, right? There's a balancing act that has to be addressed. How do we protect the public health, which is an important asset of this state and this country, but how do we also protect the economy? Because that's also equally important. So we can't treat one more important than the other. They have to be balanced to the point that we take care of all of it, because without either one of them, we're in trouble. Because if we don't have a healthy economy, our public health is also going to suffer. So a virus, in and of itself, why it's something we need to address, that can affect public health, a destroyed economy can affect public health. My ex-wife, I apologize, my children's mother, because if she heard me say ex-wife, she'd holler at me. She comes from Eastern Europe, and her and I have talked about this extensively. She understands exactly what it means to have an economy that's so distraught that the public health suffers immensely. Immensely. And that's something that she's been talking to me about a lot, and she provides a lot of good information to me and a lot of history that really gives me some perspective. If I were to ask each of you for the last 6 months, what is the one word that you could say to me that's led your decision making? One word that led your decision making. What would it be?
Freedom.
What? Who said that? Who said fear? That's right, fear. Fear is a very powerful motivator, isn't it? It's very powerful. It's not new. I'm an attorney now, but I always wasn't one. I was finance and all kinds of stuff before I became an attorney, but I've always had an interest in government and how it works in our country, how it worked before we founded this country. And fear has always been a motivator. Before civilized societies, how was fear wielded? With a sword, right? That's how it was wielded. And we don't do that anymore. We're a civilized nation, civilized world. Sometimes, unfortunately, it happens, but for us it doesn't. But fear doesn't have to be wielded by a sword. Fear can be wielded in a lot of different ways. And I would humbly suggest to you that that's what's been used in various different ways for the last 6 months. Fear of an infectious disease. That's one. Fear of losing your licensure. Is that a big one? How many of you in here are afraid that if you don't follow along, you're going to lose a license? I don't know that anybody didn't raise their hand, right? That fear, that's what we're talking about. And again, that's just a different type of fear that's being used because, again, it's very powerful. So back in March, when this all started, we had March 9th, you all remember the first proclamation of disaster, right? Yep. And 7 days after that, an executive order. And when I talk about this stuff, I want to be crystal clear that to me, as a citizen of this state, I don't care about politics. This issue crosses over politics. I've been asked numerous times in the last 6 months by reporters, newspapers, business owners, politicians about politics. It does not matter to me who the governor is, what party they're from. This issue is still the same. Yes. It's still the same. So if you hear me talking about, I want to be crystal clear again, if you hear me talking about frustrations with decisions that have been made, that is not political. It just merely means I will talk about the office of governor. I don't care who's in that office. So on March 16th, we get an executive order about bars and restaurants. You all know it. Now, that wasn't the first executive order as it relates to COVID. Does anybody know what the first executive order was? Is it related to COVID-19? What's that? No, it was the marijuana dispensaries. They were the first ones. Stay at home came later, but then bars and restaurants had to shut down. And that was early on in March, right? And we needed to do that for a couple of weeks, as you all remember, because we had to flatten the curve. Flatten the curve, we didn't want to overwhelm the medical facilities. We all remember that very well. 2 weeks went, April 1st come along, and then what happened? We had a continuation for another 30 days. Continuation. And so on April 1st, I started getting involved and working with a lot of different people, but business owners was always particular interest to me because without the small business owners, we have no economy, we have no country, we have no state. The small business owners are the backbone of this state, this country. We all know that. And so why the schools was also important to me. I have triplets, they're seniors this year. That's getting real expensive next year. But so that's always been important, but a year in high school will come and go. If we alter the way that we govern ourselves and we alter the economy of this state to the point that it becomes not recoverable, that's going to last generations. And so that's always been the most important thing for me. And that's where I get to where I started trying to help business owners. Now, the office of governor is not a new, and I'm not going to give a civics lesson. We'll let Austin give that if he wants to. We have 3 branches of government. You all know that, right? We learned that in what, the 8th grade?
Yep.
Legislative, executive, judicial. The executive branch used to have a whole lot more power before this country was founded. We had governors. Governor is nothing new, the office of governor. Who did they report to before we founded this country and this state?
The king.
The king. That's right. Had a lot of power. And when we founded this state and this country, that changed. And their power was limited. And they enforced the laws that are passed by who? Where's Mr. Cabela at? Right there, the legislature. Who does the legislature speak for? The people. They speak for the people. And so that was always what I was concerned about from day one, and it's what we're going to talk about today, is that the legislature speaks, it creates laws, right? They create administrative bodies. Those administrative bodies create rules. And all of that is a structure that's put in place that the executive branch enforces. And the executive branch governs administrative bodies to help enforce those laws and those rules. We created that system over 200-something years ago, and people ask me why I do this. One of the main reasons I do it is because that system of government is what's being altered, not just in the state of Illinois, but across this nation. It's being altered significantly, and I, for my children and your children, don't want to continue to see that happen. So that's why we get to where we're at right now, and it's coming to, it's moved along in different ways in the last 6 months, but now here we are with the small business owner, the small business, the bar and restaurant owners, right? They've been isolated out. We all know that. Why? That's a good question. I've got some information on that. What can you do about that? I just want to let you guys know, I used to do this and provocating it a lot, and I had documents and I put it on a PowerPoint, and my kids make fun of me. So if I kind of stumble a little bit, you'll laugh. Just laugh at it. This is something that's, again, I threw this in here because I think it's important for you guys. The Illinois Department of Public Health. It's an administrative body. Okay? You guys have heard about them because you've got your local Department of Health now, because those were also created. I don't think there's 102 of them because some counties overlap, but there's a lot of county health departments. We have the state health department, Dr. Ezike. You guys have probably heard her name. She's the director. And that agency was created by who? Who created the Department of Health? Anybody know? The legislature. Okay? So they have a pandemic preparedness and response plan. This issue that we're dealing with of the coronavirus, viruses and how they might be it's nothing new. It's not new. It hasn't happened in a while. We've had some smaller ones. But did you guys know that in the early 1900s, when a lot of the law that was created around this issue, the smallpox, we've all heard of that, right? It had a 30% mortality rate. It didn't matter what age you were. If you caught it, there was a 30% chance you could pass away. That was a big deal. And so over time, this pandemic plan has been developed. It's 125 pages long. It has a lot of different, who does what, etc., and how we deal with this. And there's one of the things I wanted to point out to you guys on the third bullet point. And this talks about influenza, and they say COVID's not a flu, but we know it's close. It causes annual outbreaks, are transmitted between people, and can be transmitted by people who are infected but who appear well. We've heard that all along, right? Read the next sentence. Efforts to prevent their introduction into the United States or decrease transmission in the community are likely to have limited effectiveness. Right? Their own plan acknowledges that measures taken to prevent the spread have limited effectiveness. There are a lot of people who would suggest to you that what we're doing is merely pushing the ball down the road. I'm not a medical expert. I'm not here to say that's true or not, but there are people a lot smarter than me that say 6 months from now or 3 months from now we start lifting these restrictions. It's going to just create this up and down, and eventually it's going to run its course. Their own Department of Public Health preparedness plan would suggest to you that they understood that. You guys will like this chart. And, I'm getting to the law, but this background I think is extremely important to give you context. Anybody ever seen this chart? Any of you seen it before the last couple of weeks? Do you know where it come from? Anybody?
IDPH.
IDPH, not a public document that's on their website. It floats around to the local health departments, and it was I got it, because there's a health department administrator. Yeah, there are a few down in southern Illinois who absolutely 100% say that what I'm getting ready to present to you is how his job goes. He can't shut down any indoor premises without a real outbreak. He gives me this report. It's how long it is. It was September 16th. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that this information has integrity, because it has 25 listed categories where they say this is where these outbreaks occurred since July 1st. Now, I've actually seen the questions that here's what happens. When there's somebody tests positive, it goes to the state of Illinois. State of Illinois sends it out to the local health department. The local health department, through a grant, has contact tracers that have hired to ask questions, and those questions are scripted. And I've got the questions. He gave them to me too. They're not public. You ought to ask your health department for them. And I read them, and I'm like, I'm an educated person. When I answer those questions, how do you figure out which category to put it in? It's kind of precarious, but let's accept that it's true. Now, just because I have it memorized, down there where you see 4.97%, that's restaurants. 3.39% is bars. So if you add those together, 8.36%, according to their own facts and science, if you accept it as true, is where positive cases of COVID come from since July 1st. Folks, that's less than 1 out of 10. Less than 1 out of 10, according to their facts and science. Okay? That's significant, because they will try to tell you, well, that's where the COVID outbreaks are at. We've got to close you down. That's not why they're trying to close you down, because statistically, less than 1 out of 10 is not even remotely a majority. As you can see, the first two, we all know, it's no secret. It's long-term facilities, assisted living, etc. And I'm going to come back to this statistic when I give you some more statistics. But again, keep in mind, when people want to tell you that you need to close down, in your region, less than 1 out of 10, according to them, comes from your bars and restaurants. Now, I went ahead this morning and threw this in, and again, this electronic PowerPoint is, I can email it to anybody that wants to see it. I put some of this data together because it's easy, and I've been dealing with the Attorney General's office for months now, where the position they take is that we have this huge disaster, and this disaster, we have to do these things or it's going to be catastrophic. And they sell that. What are they selling? It starts with an F, fear. And when you start looking at the numbers, having a finance background, I'm like, I don't get it. But I'm willing to question myself, going, make sure I'm not missing anything. This is your region, region 1, right here. You've got 606, I pulled up a census online, I'm assuming it's accurate, 665,000 people. Now, I thought there was a few things that were interesting here as of September 30th. You've tested almost a third of your population. That's a pretty good representative sample. Okay? Of your total population, less than 2% have tested positive. Your overall positivity rate, since they started tracking it, less than 6%. Some of these other numbers are more interesting. If you look at the mortality rate of the total of infected people, you have about a 98% survival rate. And of your total population, 99.96% of your population has not passed. Drop down there, where you see where it says B and R. What I did is I took that 8.36% and applied it to those numbers. So look at the positivity, the mortality rate of your infected population, total population. Look how small those numbers are. Look how small that they are. Of even infections, 0.18% of the infections to date from bars and restaurants. Have you ever asked yourself, I'm going to throw this in, how long ago did we go to just dealing with positivity rate? Remember at one point in time it was like people were going to be on ventilators and we were going to have, the hospitals overwhelmed and people were going to pass away, and that's important stuff, and every one of us in here knows that's important. That didn't happen, folks. I have so many people that called me wanting me to help them, and I was sad that I couldn't, that lost their jobs in the medical industry. They lost their job. Yeah, people shaking. You guys know. They didn't overwhelm it. So, and again, I would humbly suggest to you that that goalpost or that messaging has changed over time. You all know that. Now we're talking about positivity, right? Is positivity in and of itself, as citizens of this state, is that the conclusive factor that we are concerned with? I'm not. I am concerned about how many people are getting significantly ill, how many people are going to hospitals getting run, and how many people are passing away. That is significant. And so this, as of September 30th, kind of lays out for you the lack of significance, in my opinion. Now this one's even a little more interesting, because what I did is I took your region and I took the last 7 days. Now, what they use is a 7-day rolling average. They roll the average every 7 days. This is just a 7-day average. So when it shows a positivity rate, 7.72, it's under 8, because again, that's just a flat average. It's not rolling. So their rolling average is calculated correctly. But look how insignificant these numbers come, again, in my humble opinion. Look at the positives. Look at the people who have passed away. And we would all sit here and say, you know what, 6 people, that's sad. We don't want anybody to pass away. But we're talking about whether or not we're going to shut down a whole industry, right? And so when you look at these numbers, especially when you apply them to the bars and restaurants, look how small those numbers get, right? The mortality rate in the last 7 days of your infected population, 0.04%. So 99.96% of infected population, people infected in your population, were not from bars and restaurants. Why then bars and restaurants? That's the question, one of the main questions you guys want to ask yourselves, right? Why?
Because we're easy.
I think so.
There's an article that came out today. Greg Bishop's a writer in Springfield. Greg's a friend of mine. He's a middle-of-the-road guy. He calls it like he sees it. Him and I get along sometimes. Sometimes we disagree, which is the perfect type of person. We never want somebody we agree with all the time. Greg wrote an article today, The Center Square. You should read it, because Tony McCombie is a rep up here someplace. Tony's quoted in there. Why are they going after bars and restaurants? And look at this. There was a phone call yesterday where a lot of local and in your region health officials and mayors, etc., were on that call with Dr. Ezike. And all of you ought to call and talk to your health officials and other officials about that. And it's now public because it's been printed in the paper. IDPH proclaimed that the nature of eating, drinking, shouting, yelling, and close contact at bars is a higher risk setting. Really? Really? Is that conjecture or is that facts and science? Is a question that I like to know. And here's the even better one. IDPH proclaims that they can't control homes and churches and also workplaces where they really believe a lot of this is being created. They have to go to places they can control, bars and restaurants. See, they don't want to shut down, in my humble opinion again, bars and restaurants because there's any significant outbreak going there. They actually have no facts to support that. They want to do that because that's a way to control people, right? If they shut down your indoor facility, guess who can't go in there? Me, right? So it's an indirect workaround to control the movement of the population. It's not based upon, you own a bar or restaurant, sir? No. Who owns one? Somebody give me. Okay, oh my God. You, all right, there you go. It's not based upon specific facts to your bar or restaurant. We're going to get to that. So you've also heard, you hear this, and actually, and again, I'm not here to talk about litigation, but one of the ones I'm in, I really want to see the facts and science. Is there anybody in here who wants to see the facts and science that's destroying your livelihood? Yes. My senator down in Metro East is Jason Plummer. Jason's a good man. He owns Plummer Lumber, RP Lumber, him and his father. He has asked for the facts and science. Don't give him anything. So here's one of the facts and science, and you know where I got it? Remember that September 16th report that got sent to the local health departments I got my hands on? Let me show you the facts and science that they're using, folks. Look at this. There's a federal study that was done by 11 outpatient facilities across the country. Across the country. How many people participated? 314. They had 800 something, but by the time they weeded them out, people didn't want to participate in other ways. They got a sample. Now, I took statistics in college, and I don't know how well I did, but of 300 something million people in the United States of America, 314 is not a representative sample. But see some of the things that's in that report, and I actually have the link down here for you. Okay? Look at some of this. Case control investigation or symptomatic outpatients from 11 U.S. healthcare facilities found that close contact with persons with known COVID are going to locations that offer on-site eating and drinking options were associated with COVID. Is that the facts and science? Adults with positive COVID test results were approximately twice as likely to have reported dining at a restaurant. Is that facts and science? Because going to restaurants and bars, I don't know about bars, but restaurants for certain is pretty common, right? So this, I believe, is the facts and science that they rely upon. They're not relying upon, and again, in my opinion, facts and science driven, especially by Region 1, right? Call your health department right now and say, hey, I own such and such bar and restaurant. Please tell me how many positive COVID tests came from my bar or restaurant.
You won't get an answer.
They don't know. They don't know. And I'm going to get to the law, but you know what the law requires to shut your bar and restaurant down? That they prove that to a judge. That your bar and restaurant is doing that. Here we go. The Illinois Department of Public Health Act. It's a law created by the legislative branch of government. It created the Illinois Department of Public Health, and it is the law of the state of Illinois. And it says that the Department of Health has the supervision of the health and lives of the people. There's nothing wrong with that, right? Look at this sentence. The department may adopt, promulgate, repeal, and amend rules and regulations, right? They can create rules and regulations consistent with the law. They can't override the law that protect the people's health. That's the general purpose of this act. Part B, here we go. Subject to the provisions of Section C, which we'll get to, that's the best one, the department may order a place to be closed and made off limits to the public to prevent the probable spread of a contagious or infectious disease. So, a place to be closed and made off limits to the public. Is that what's going on right now?
Yeah.
They want to make your premises off limits to the public, right? Subject to provision C, the department may, the health department. Well, what does provision C say? Any of you ever read that before today? No? Anybody? Okay. I want to throw this in. I left it out at the front. And this is one of the most important things. When you ask why would Tom come up here and do this? This is why. We as citizens, I'm 51 years old. I am guilty. I grew up in a poor family. I spent most of my life trying to get ahead to make a life better for my kids. And I did that financially. But you know what I haven't done, and I failed at miserably, is watching my government. Yes. And I'm not being, oh, the government's the bad people. Government is government. And government, by its very nature, will continue to do things to protect us. Right? They will. And I'm not saying they're nefarious. I'm just saying it snowballs and eventually gets out of control. And so, each of you, how many of you in here, bar and restaurant owners, closed down in March when the governor's executive order came out? Most of you. How'd you hear about it? Did you see it on TV? On his press release? Got it in an email, right? How many of you lost thousands? Thousands. Hundreds of thousands. How many of you went to a lawyer and said, you got to explain this to me. How'd they shut my business down? How many? I got 2. Folks? 3? That right there, and again, I'm not picking because I'm guilty. That right there is why we're here today. Thank God. When I'm looking across this room and I see all the people in here, I start feeling that the last 5 months of my life have not been made in vain. Because that's all I've been trying to do is educate people. Educate them.
Thank you.
And educated people is the only deterrent to what's happening right now and what has happened for decades. And it doesn't mean that, again, I'm not here to say government is bad. I'm just here when they start making decisions, when they pass rules, when they do things like that, we have to pay attention. How many of you just found out in the last month that you had to put cameras in your video gaming area? How many of you just found that out? How many of you knew they passed that rule last year? Okay, how many of you did? I had so many people call me, and I'm like, I don't know. I go look, I'm like, that was last year. What do you ask me about it now? I didn't know. So we have to be diligent in paying attention and understanding this stuff. So, except subsection C, that's how they make your premises off limits. Here's C. Except as provided in this section, it says it again, no place may be ordered to be closed or made off limits except with the consent of the owner. How many of you are consenting? Anybody consenting? Anybody? I don't see a hand. Okay, you're not consenting. Or upon the prior order of a court of competent jurisdiction. Has anybody in here got a court order in Region 1 that says close your facility? No. Anybody? No. Folks, that's the law in the state of Illinois. I didn't make it. That was created before I probably was even born. But that's the law. Now here's a little caveat. If the department thinks that you're at immediate risk, they can close you. But you have to be in court within 48 hours. See the judge. And when you go back to the judge, there's going to have to do some things. And that's what this slide said. If you got that immediate order without your consent, 48 hours has got to have you in front of your judge. Here, we're Winnebago County, is that right? I don't know who all the judges are here. There's probably a lot of them. You go see your judge, and you get to have your day in court. Now let's talk about what they got to prove in a courtroom. Clear and convincing evidence. See? Mr. Davies, you know what that means, right? Clear and convincing. Clear and convincing is up here. Preponderance down here. Clear and convincing means it's serious. Because you're going to do what? You're going to take a property that you have. You have a property right. They're going to suspend that for some amount of time. That is a right that's not to be taken lightly. So they got to prove by clear and convincing evidence what? That you have a place where there's a significant amount of activity likely to spread a dangerous, contagious, or infectious disease. That's what they have to prove. Let me give you an example. One of you owns a restaurant, and then the last week, 5 people who tested positive for COVID said last night, I ate at your restaurant. That's getting somewhere, right? Right? Then the Department of Health comes to you if that happens, and there's a form.